Okay, we have the stage. So, the first thing I would like to say to John and everybody is that John and I have one thing in common outside of this particular business, and I wanted to ask him how he got involved in this, how he was an owner of a Saab Sonnet, which is that car. Both of us owned a Saab Sonnet, and in my world, this is an extremely important thing. So, John, how did you end up with a Saab Sonnet?
Um, I needed a a good ride to a distant location every day because I decided that I wanted to live in Berkeley or at least in the East Bay, or I was actually originally when I got the car, I was in Walnut Creek. So I had to commute to Redwood City every day, and it was a long, grueling thing. It was an hour each way, and I had this little Austin Healey Sprite, which was very. I had a like a 1 foot long muffler on it, one of these racing mufflers, and I was going deaf just about doing it. And I saw this. They had this ad for on the radio for this Saab dealer, and they said that if you if you buy a Saab from us, we will send you to Sweden to pick it up.
Oh,
And I said, well, then I went to them and I said, hey, I'm not so interested in the sedan, but how about that sporty version that you have, which costs about twice as much? And I said, if you'll take my wife and me to Sweden, that'll be fine. And they said, sure. So
wow.
my wife and I got like a 15-day, free kind of very nice, vacation. We'd been already the year before. We'd been in Europe. We'd been in Sweden, and
But you had never been in Trollhättan before, right? So that was the first.
no, I never was there. And we picked up our Saab, our Sonnet there, and drove it for I don't know, 20 or 30 miles, and then they put it on the boat and it came over to us.
Okay, I think if we don't change the subject, people are gonna tune out because they only we care about that. But I will just say that. Do you know who one of the first Saab dealers in America was? Kurt Vonnegut owned a Saab dealership. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Now we're done with Saab. It's true. All right, you talked about Redwood City. That's because you were working for Ampex, correct?
That's right.
And how did you get to work for Ampex?
By pure luck, I really, I went to a fair, one of these in San Francisco, where job fair. Well, it was part of a comp. They used to have a electronics conference, general electronic parts conference, once a year in San Francisco at the Cow Palace or wherever. And I went there and tried to get, I wanted to see if I could get a job. I just come back from Europe and I didn't have a job. In other words, I'd left my job here in the East Bay working for a military industrial kind of guy complex, and I didn't want to go back there if I could help it. And I lucked out. I was so excited that I actually got the job. In other words, I was very, very interested in working at a place like Ampex or maybe Hewlett Packard, but Ampex especially. Uh,
And you brought to that job a degree in electrical engineering, or what is it? What
no,
is
I
your?
had a degree in physics, actually.
Oh,
It's one of those things where if engineering kind of turns you off, I had worked. I started off with trying to get an engineering degree, and halfway through, back in 1962, 61, actually, my family needed my full-time work to, I couldn't, they couldn't, my mother couldn't, who was a single mother, she couldn't support me
yeah.
anymore, even though I had a part-time job on the side. And she said, you've got to go full time. So I went to work for Underwriters Laboratories for about a year. So I was a tech at Underwriters Laboratories. And I decided that it was so easy and comparatively speaking, at least what underwriters did. and kind of boring that
And what did they
I
do? They basically certified things that would that so you could plug them in and they wouldn't blow up. I mean,
well,
you had
yeah, you wanted to safety test them. We tried
yeah.
to burn things down, is what we tried to do. We really set things up to catch things on fire. We really
Yeah.
did do it. In fact, it was a very bad habit for a long time. I was never allowed, in fact, even by Mark Levinson around equipment because anything I touched seemed to blow up. And so it's true. I was very sloppy comparatively. I should have been, for some years. It cost
So what did you do at when you got to Ampex? Were you working on tape recorder amplifiers or
Yes, I was, but not audio tape recorders at first. It was actually instrumentation tape recorders
uh
for NASA. NASA needed
oh
these 120, I mean, 100 megahertz, not 100, 1 megahertz type of tape recorders. And they would use half-inch tape, but they would use a special formulation, and they would go at 120 inches per second. They really cooked.
oh
And they needed it for measuring the instruments, monitoring the instruments, recording their functions.
so what percentage of Ampex's business was in hi-fi and pro audio, and what percentage was in like that sort of thing, like NASA and government contracts?
In all honesty, it was better. They had it. It was like three ways. They had the video, and they were really top in video at the time. And then
Yeah.
they had the instrumentation, and it was at least equal, if not more, to audio. Audio was a very small part. In fact, they actually had discontinued the audio department for a couple of years.
Huh.
And I guess by common, desire, people complaining and saying, I want a machine, they went back into the business. And they had a bunch of provincial guys. I mean, they weren't very easy to work with, these people. They didn't really want to improve anything or be state of the art or anything like that.
This is in the early 60s, is it when tape
Yep.
recorders were the thing in the studio and in people's homes too, and yet they didn't
Well,
want to
yeah,
do it.
it was 1967 1968 when I first, when I worked at, I moved to the audio department. But the only reason that they told me this, that the only reason they hired me, because they didn't really think much of me, I was some sort of silly kid, because I worked so cheap. That they really liked that. So they told me that after many months afterward. And in fact, I quit Ampex years later because they wouldn't give me a fast enough raise. They kept
That's
giving
why
me
I
raises, but
quit a magazine I wrote for the same reason. Okay,
and I
so
just said, heck with you. So.
and so you weren't really involved in the audio side of things there, but then you left Ampex to go where?
Well, no, first of all, it was actually a tripartite type thing. First of all, for 6 months or so, I worked on these NASA, designs. And I worked under a really brilliant guy who taught me an awful lot. And he's the one that hired me in anyway. And then I moved over to the audio department for about a year. And then I moved from the audio department because I couldn't get along with my boss to the research department. And then in the research department, I worked on video systems. I didn't like video that as much as all that compared to
Yeah.
audio, but I couldn't stay in the audio department because of my immediate supervisor was a real pain and had given me an ulcer, really. So I just said, enough of this. But I
So
learned a lot.
I'm
That's
getting the
where I
picture that
learned my trade.
I'm getting the picture that you prefer being an independent contractor than being an organization man, because that seems to be what you ended up
I
doing
guess
through the
you'd say
years.
so. I didn't mind learning. Ampex was a really great place. They had a wonderful technical library, especially for audio. And it was one of the best technical libraries I've ever been in my life. And
Yeah.
I used to go there almost every day. And I literally could use the librarians to Xerox whatever I wanted, from the library. I just
Uh-huh.
leave, and it would come to me by office mail. It was
That
wonderful.
was convenient.
I
Did you
learned,
meet
I just, what?
did you meet Bing Crosby during that whole time?
No, I never, but I heard of him. The guy who actually worked, my big boss, or the boss that I liked, there was a guy who I liked a lot, and his name was Harold Lindsay. And Harold was the guy who told Poniatoff that maybe tape recorders are a great thing to go into back in like 1947 or 8 or whenever. And he was the chief engineer for the Ampex in the early Ampex stuff.
Yeah.
But he had been sort of retired and then brought back when they when they turned back the when they brought back the audio department. Then he was ahead of that. But there was an intermediate guy who was the guy, and he didn't want to be in the audio department. He even admitted to me, he says, I don't want to be here. I want to be in video. But they asked me to move to the audio department, and as a good soldier, I did. You know, one of those kind of guys. And he didn't care much for audio, really. But so I had to work under him, and he's the one that gave me the ulcer. And he's the one that got me to move on to research, which was exciting. I mean, the guys in research were the ones that knew it, which end was up. And I learned an awful lot from them.
Yeah.
So
Now
by the
somewhere
time I
along,
left Ampex after a couple of years, I knew my business. I knew how to design things.
and then you ended up working for the Grateful Dead. How long after you left Ampex?
Well, there was an interlude of this. I actually had left for another job. In other words, and it was in an audio shop. It was actually Berkeley Custom Electronics was the name of the place, and they were available in Berkeley, of course, and they sold Klipsch and Marantz and Mac
Uh,
and all that. They were the high-end store at the
yeah.
time.
Yeah, of course.
And we were going to do great things. But what happened was when I went to work there, I got my wage and everything. I got they gave me an increase in salary even over Ampex. But
Wow.
what they didn't do was give me any real engineering to do. There was some engineering that was a project we did for some home, custom installation in the Berkeley Hills. And then after that, it was just sales and repair. And I said, I can't do this for,
That's not for you. That's not for you. That's
well,
ridiculous.
I didn't mind I had worked for this same fellow before I finished college. So I liked the guy and I liked the situation and I didn't mind doing a certain amount of it, but no engineering. So I thought I had another job and I went to this, I got interviewed for a disk drive company that, would make one of the original disk drives
Wow.
before they were really invented. I mean, they were just starting. This is 1970, you know.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I'd gone through the vice president and everything, and I thought I had the job. So I told my old boss, and he was, well, Joe, I'm going to move on. And then he got really ticked at me because he said, well, I invested, hired you. And so within a week, he had a replacement for me. And the problem was the other job fell through. So I was without work. And I didn't have a job for like 3 or 4 months. And I knew Ron Wickersham, who was with Alembic. We were friends from Ampex. And I had helped him with a couple of things with the Grateful Dead's tape recorder, their new
Ah.
MM1000. Then Ron said, John, why don't you work for the Dead? I'm working for them. And I said, no, you can't be serious, And he
Were
said,
you
oh,
were you a
yeah.
Deadhead? Did you like the music? Were you
Oh yeah, I did, but I wasn't hippie really. I mean, I couldn't be. You can't be in an industry. I mean, you're a white shirt man. Your white shirt and tie and
Yeah.
jacket, coat, and You got to be that kind of in the 60s, you had to be that way. And drugs, oh man, I didn't couldn't even go near marijuana. I mean, because
To this day, seriously?
no, then
Okay.
then I was afraid because if I got caught and
Yeah.
arrested or something,
Yep.
the my sister-in-law was a drug dealer, so it got to be kind of iffy. Once in a while, I almost got caught just by being nearby, if you
Around it, sure. So now,
and
what was it like working for the Grateful Dead? What was that experience like for you?
well, I didn't really work for the Dead per se. I worked for Alembic, and
Right.
Alembic was sponsored by Bear. And Bear wasn't even around most of the time. He didn't really come in and on a day to day. He just supplied the money. And there were four.
Bear was a that's a nickname for a person, right? Bear.
Bear is that's all he would. His name is Stanley Osley, but
Right. Okay. Good. I was waiting for you to say that.
Bear, he wouldn't allow anything to be. We couldn't call him that. We had to call him Bear,
Bear.
and I never figured out what Bear meant until I read the book that fellow did, and then I saw it. Apparently, he was hairy chested or something. I don't know, but I thought it was like a. Well, back in those days, hippies type thing. My, special animal.
Now, was he a trust fund baby? Was he somebody who had a lot of
Oh
money?
yeah, his father or his uncle or his grandfather was a senator, I think,
Oh,
in Kentucky, I think, or somewhere like that.
wow.
And
And he went out to the coast and funded the Grateful Dead and made great
well,
LSD and that.
Bear was well, he had actually got into the LSD thing first, of course,
Yeah,
and made a lot of money at it. He was
of
very
course.
good. He's very, very good at precision, at getting things right.
Yeah.
And
So
and
what did you do for the Grateful Dead exactly? You worked on the Wall of Sound or no? Or you did the tape
oh yeah,
recorder?
well that was of course, but that was years later.
Yeah.
In 1970, I built a mixer for to replace the vacuum tube mixers that they were using they were Ampex vacuum tube mixers, which were basically just a one vacuum tube running open loop.
Yep.
And each channel was just a simple open loop tube, and then it mixed in. You mix them in front or back, and that was it. But they sounded good.
I
That's what
imagine
the
I was going
Grateful
to ask
Dead
you.
used.
Yeah.
And so I built the best mixer I knew how to do. I picked the best, but I made it out of integrated circuits, and the integrated circuits I chose were still amongst the best there was at that time, and they were military spec kind of things. They cost real money, but they were an advanced technology. But when we put it all together, the band took it on the road, and then they decided that there was something wrong with it. And Bear was
They
running it.
like tubes sound better. Is that what it was?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So what happened was Bear himself, I was told, tried to run the darn thing on batteries, and because it was a plus or minus 24-volt kind of thing,
Yeah.
and he put the batteries in backwards, hooked it up, and he blew the whole thing up because that'll do it. It was solid state.
That's what happens when you take
So,
acid and try
so
to
then
work on
they went back
electronics.
to the tube stuff because they had to have a backup. And when they did, they said, "Hey, man, we're not going to go back to that mixer. Forget it." And then I got quietly laid off. Like, well,
Because Owsley blew up the mixer that you
more
built.
than that, I
Something
had
else.
failed to make a high enough quality unit to actually replace vacuum tubes.
Oh,
The whole idea was we wanted to get solid state in to replace the vacuum tubes, which were going out of style at the time.
yeah. So was it
We
more
were
of a
having a
style
hard time
thing?
just locating vacuum tubes. We thought, it's going to be over. We're not going to be
Yeah.
able to get them, so we have to do solid state. But all the solid state stuff didn't sound quite right, and
Well, we all went through that era. You know, John, we all went through that era at the beginning of the solid state uh, revolution. People got rid of their tubes and got these solid state devices and said something's not right. This doesn't sound very good. So
That's right.
why was that? Why was that? What? Because I had a lot of lousy sounding. You know, I got rid of a PAS3X Dynaco that sounded wonderful, and I got a PAT4 that was crap. And and and
No kidding.
I called Dynaco and they said, "Well, you're just not used to this low distortion sound that you're getting now." I said, "No, it sounds like crap. I don't care what it, you know."
No, you're absolutely right. It was one of the worst designs. And that's why I'm laughing so hard because a colleague of mine, in fact, we shared a house together, and he had the PAT4 and I had the PAS3.
Oh,
And so I kept my PAS3 until I worked with Mark Levinson and got the JC2. I
yeah,
mean, it was that good, that
yeah.
listenable. And
I
as you
missed.
well know, it was amazing what Dinah did with that little guy. But
Did you build that? Did you build a kit or did you buy it ready made?
I can't remember. Probably a kit
Hmm.
because I could
Yeah,
build a kit. I used to build kits. That was something I
yeah.
did.
Those are fun. It was fun doing that.
Well, they can be. They can be. Yeah, but yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of money in those. Yeah, it was student days,
Yeah.
back in the early '60s and so forth. So
And so let's go back. Let's go back. You left the Grateful Dead. They got rid of you, and then where did you go next?
well, there was this movie that was coming out with that was being shown. They were taking the Fillmore Auditorium was going to end. Fillmore East and Fillmore West both. And Bill Graham had decided that he wasn't going to do that anymore. He was going to do outdoor events that had a lot more people and so forth.
Right.
And so they wanted to shoot a movie called "The Last Days of the Fillmore."
Hmm.
And a friend of mine who was a recording engineer couldn't do the gig, so he said, "John, well, look, why don't you do this help, help?" And it just so happened that they had rented the Grateful Dead's recording system. So boy, I knew that system because
Yeah.
I'd worked with it. And so we went a week in a little recording truck with the Grateful Dead. We had our own mixing board and all, but we
But you
had
weren't
this
you were not you were not an experienced recording engineer at that point.
not at all. In fact, a
So,
guy named Nigel Noble did the
oh,
actual recording
I
engineering.
see.
And Nigel became, he got an Academy Award at one point, and
Oh,
he became a producer for video productions and so forth. He made out all right, but no, he did that. I just got the equipment running. For
okay.
example, with the Jefferson Airplane, the bassist came up to me and said, "What was his name? You probably remember the name for the Jefferson Airplane. That
Uh,
bass guy, the guy with the glasses and uh,
Marty Ballin,
no,
Paul Kantner.
no,
I'm sorry, that's right for $10,000. No, which
It's
one?
Jack Cassidy.
Oh, Jack
Jack
Cassidy.
Cassidy.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, Jack Cassidy came up to me because it was their time, and
yeah.
he says, "I need to be direct mic'd. I mean, I have to have
Pickup.
I can't have a microphone. I have to be plugged in direct to the tape
Right.
recorder." And I said, "Well, and we need this isolation box." And so I didn't know, we weren't told this in advance. So I thought about it and I said, I've got this little Shure transformer that actually it's supposed to be for taking a microphone and make and amplifying it up. but it could be turned in reverse and it would step it down. And then I could run that line to the tape recorder. So I built my own. They were very shocked at me. They said, "Wow, you built your own, box, And I did because I had to on the spot, like it was we had the afternoon to do it. So I got that running, and I had to solve problems like that. In fact, I impressed Bill Graham enough. He wanted to hire me, but I knew his nature, and I realized I didn't want to work for him.
You didn't want to work for anybody, is what I'm getting.
Well, in a way, that's true. In fact, I've always been happier as a consultant,
Yeah.
and I've been almost a consultant most of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then you're independent and you do what you want. All right, so you worked for a bunch of rock stars. Did that like was it exciting? Did you were part of the rock world and you were talking to all these guys that were getting up on stage?
No, the
Didn't
guys and I didn't really talk much, but I had to go down to Hollywood, and I had to go to Goldwyn Studios and help them get this film. See, they weren't used to doing rock films in the
yeah.
sound stages there. So they didn't have a really advanced. I mean, their stuff wasn't enough channels. We had a 16-channel master. We had to mix it down. Blah blah blah. So they brought me in as a consultant, and I scared the heck out of them all. And as you can,
Why? Why'd you scare them?
well, I'm driven. I want to get it right, and I could do it right. Well, let me give you an idea of what I had to do.
Okay.
They needed at one point we had mixed it down to from 16 tracks to like 3 tracks. And they said, okay, this is the basic thing, but we need to make an extra, a copy, protection copy. And every time they tried to make a protection copy, it came out really lousy. And they kept saying, John, what do? We can't make a protection copy that's anywhere near the original.
Why?
Well, what I think it was, the thing that I did, this is what I saw, how I solved it. I said, okay, guys, you're not going to be happy because I work with the guys who ran the machines and they'd listen to the music as it was being re-recorded, right? I said, well, you're going to have to stop doing that because we're going to run it all backwards. So we're going to run all the tapes in reverse while we record. And
Why?
because you cancel the phase, 2 generations of forward phase shift that happens with normal tape recorders.
By running it backwards.
Yeah.
Okay, let me stop for 1 second and ask you a question. We're in this tape reel-to-reel tape recorder revival. You know about that,
Yes.
right? Okay, so people are getting a master tape. They're getting a copy of a master tape to use to make dubs. So by the time the person spends $450 or $500 on a tape, they're getting at best a 3rd generation tape or a
Probably.
4th generation tape.
Sure.
And what's the quality of that compared to taking a master tape and cutting a lacquer and making a really good record?
Oh, I think making the record is better.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
But then again, you have to get the stuff off the record too.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
people don't have the best of the best.
yeah. I do.
Well, you do, and you know.
It's unbelievable what I'm getting off of my records that I haven't played in 30 years. I take out a record I think I know and I play it. It's like, I didn't know that record. It's crazy what's in those grooves.
I knew when I was at Ampex, there was the place where they made, like a room, where they made the standard tapes for Ampex. Ampex reproduced alignment tape 101-01,
Yeah.
and the first tone will be 1,000 cycles, bleep, And the thing was, this guy used to do recordings just like you did. Back in the 40s and the 50s, he had a place in San Francisco and he recorded like the United Nations. I mean, when, 1945, 46 and all that, before they had tape recorders, right? And they would
Yeah.
do these transcription records and so forth. I was talking to him, well, back in 1968 or so. And I said, well, tape recording's pretty good, He says, have you ever heard a direct disc, John? That's what he said. And I hadn't.
Oh,
And he
wow.
says, oh yeah, he says they're much better, but the tape is convenient. He said that's the most important thing. And so he
Absolutely.
was right in many ways. And so, although back in the
Did you ever
day,
meet somebody? Did you ever meet somebody at Ampex named Aiken? Last name Aiken?
no, I didn't.
Okay, that's off on a tangent. Um, all right, now you left the Grateful Dead, and then you were at the United Nations. No, I'm getting tired. No, and then you ended up working for Mark Levinson. Is that the
I
transition?
never worked for Mark Levinson. You're right about that kind of stuff. What had happened is that after making the movie took about a year to produce,
This was the
get
right.
actually processed.
The Fillmore. This was the Fillmore movie
Yeah,
that Bill Graham. Okay,
yeah, and they kind of kicked me out of Hollywood for being. No, really, I think I'm banned. But the that's what I was sort of told later. And but I did get a big record. I mean, a credit on my uh,
in the movie.
on the movie. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I did because of my more major contribution than they expected me originally to do.
So what was the credit? What was the credit you got?
Well, it
Production
was
engineer,
it was like a credit was like I don't know technical.
executive producer,
No,
technical.
not so much a producer, but recording. I can't even remember now.
Yeah.
But it was like I only had two names. I think Nigel and me were only the only two on that screen. So you can imagine. Well, I wasn't in the list. I was like, right there. You
And
know.
can we see that movie? Is it on Netflix or
Well, I think
Amazon
so.
Prime or something?
Yeah, and
What's it called?
the last days of the Fillmore, as far as I remember.
Okay, and it's all the rock stars from the West Coast
Oh
or
yeah, we had everybody. We had Santana and the Dead, and we had. The Airplane, and then we had some smaller groups that I hadn't really heard very much of, but they were popular in back in the day. Uh,
and so
they're almost folk.
where did you sit? So during all these concert performances, you got to sit right up front. You got to hear everything as it was happening. So you had the best seats in the house, or did you have to
No,
sit in the back in a booth of some kind?
no, we were in a truck.
Oh, so you had a mobile truck. Oh, okay.
And we had a tap off the major mic. We actually didn't use our own microphones. We actually used the house mics, you might say, or whatever. And we had a splitter, and that a very high quality splitter, but it
Yeah.
transformer splitter, all passive, and it would send to the our truck, 16 channels of stuff, or 15 channels, whatever.
And
And
did you how
that's
many
what we,
tracks did you have to record on? You didn't have 16 tracks to record on at that point in time, right? Or did
well,
you?
we did, yes, we
Oh,
did. And
oh,
we had to use one track, of course, for
think.
control track, so we had a 60 cycle tone,
Right,
we had to do that because the machine itself was not being controlled by the cameras or anything.
right.
And we had,
They didn't have no SMPTE time code at that point in time, right?
well, they had something because they sent us, I don't know if they sent us a tone. I can't remember where we got that tone. It might have been from them. One of the tracks might have been just a 60 cycle
Right.
thing coming from a Naga or
All right,
something.
so let's move on. Let's continue on. This is your life, John Curlis, and I'm Ralph Edwards. So after that was finished, where did you go?
Well, that's when I took a trip to Europe. I always like to go to Europe, and I hadn't been in Europe since 1970. And I decided to go and spend a few months. And I did, I hung out with rock groups there, um, with the Pink Floyd.
You
Uh,
did.
yeah, and not the Pink Floyd themselves. Remember the people who did the sound for the Pink Floyd? I hung out with them,
Oh, so
and
who was that at that
in
point? That was, it
London.
wasn't
What?
Alan Parsons, was it? It was Alan Parsons.
No, no, it was called Kelsey and Morris at the time.
Uh-huh.
And they had these phase linear amps, phase linear 700s, and they had these big speaker arrays, mostly horns.
Yeah.
They're mostly British designed horns, rather than
So
they have
this
I
was
think.
their stage production. This is what they had when they went out on tour. They used this system you're talking about.
Well, well, whatever, I guess, but when they had a gig in a town, at least, and it was their kind of, they just worked. This outfit worked only for the Dead. I mean, for the Floyd, and they were interesting guys, and
Yeah, I would say.
so
Uh,
and there were other groups too. There were other people that I met that were part of the rock and roll world. And for a few months I hung out. I mean, except taking time off to go to mainland, to France and to
a lot of people hearing this would say, "Boy, if I could have hung out with the Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, that would be a really cool couple of years of my life." So did you realize how cool it was hanging out with those people, or was it just like this is the
oh, I was on a quest for audio quality. I mean, my job in life was to make the best audio equipment available. And I hadn't, I was still in pursuit of trying to do that. I hadn't found the so-called secret exactly, or whatever that is, of making the best of the best
Yeah.
yet. Because remember, I'd had that problem with the Grateful Dead mixer, and I was kind of gun shy, Geez, I can make good stuff, but not great stuff. And I had to learn how to do. I kept growing,
Of course.
and then I came back to the United States. I was virtually broke, and I called my friend Ron Wickersham, and because we were
From
friends
Alembic.
at Alembic, we stayed
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, we're going to do this project," and he says, "Would you like to join?" And I said, "Sure." So he says, "We're going to do this wall of sound thing," and okay, well. And then he came up with a differential mic and this and that and the other. And I said, "Well, okay." And then Ron and I had to figure out what loudspeakers to use for this wall of sound. And so we were testing all the JBLs. And some of the JBLs we just decided not to use, like their tweeters. We decided that they weren't good enough. And we also found, but we worked on it for many hours, but making measurements and so forth,
Yeah.
uh, as within the limits of our equipment, which
Did
was.
you have a budget on this, or did the Grateful Dead just say, "You do whatever you got to do. We want it to be
No,
great"?
I was actually only on half time, so it was a good wage for the time,
Yeah.
but it was only half time. And
And
so
so the Wall of Sound got built, and did you go out and follow the Dead around
a
with
little
this?
bit. Yeah, I wasn't, it's tough to go out on the road. And I'm glad that I didn't really. I mean, it was too darn difficult to do.
Yeah. And you were single at this time,
Yeah, let's see.
unattached.
Uh, I have to think about that. Let's see, 1972. 73. No, I had a live-in
Yeah.
lady in San Francisco. I was living in San Francisco. And then I moved to Tiburon, of all places. I got a friend the same friend who actually got me the gig at uh, with the great, with the Wall of Sound. I mean, not the Wall of Sound, the movie.
Yeah.
Was moving to L.A. because he became a very popular and sought after recording engineer, and he was
And
just
who
too
was that?
away from
What
the
was
action.
who was his name?
Um,
You remember? Doesn't matter.
Gravener is his name.
What
Uh,
was it?
Gravener. His
Okay.
last name was Gravener. You probably didn't know him.
No.
And he was moving out of this house in Sausalito, which was a really nice deal. And he says, if you can do it, swing it. This is a good deal. So I moved to Sausalito, and then um,
So what was the next thing you did? What was the next thing you did after that? You did end up working for Mark Levinson though, right? At some point.
well,
Or the
yeah,
company.
during that time when we were building the Wall of Sound, see, that started in 1972 to 1973, all of 73. And by the middle of summer of 73, I had to build the electronics for the differential microphones. And I had to find something that I had been independently working on aside with FETs and certain topologies that were unique. And so I thought maybe, just maybe, I can make these things uh, do what they need to do to compete with vacuum tubes. And I
Hmm.
built this thing up, and the Grateful Dead liked it. Oh boy, that was a big feather in my cap.
And that was after they rejected your mixer. They
Oh,
didn't
but it
like
was
your mixer.
years later, of course.
Yeah, and you got back to them, and they
And
made
then
a.
they were happy, and I know that I had done the right job. I mean, I had done the right thing. I'd made something kind of special, and and so it didn't come overnight. It came over a period of years, really. But
Yeah.
it
Wow.
was finally there was a need. And then I met up with Mark Levinson at an Audio Engineering Society convention in LA. And I was with Bascom King. You remember him probably.
Of course. Of course.
And another guy. And we were walking around, the exhibits, and there was Mark Levinson. And I hadn't seen Mark in 5 years. He'd come to my house in 1968 to
Oh.
help him record Ali Akbar Khan tape. See, he was a
Uh-huh.
student, and he needed to make a copy of this, and he needed another machine. He had a Studer himself, a little portable Studer, a G36 maybe, and he brought
I
it
got one of those.
and we used my Ampex machine, and we made the tape. And then he had heard I had built a little amplifier. Uh, that was my own private project when I was at Ampex, and Ampex wasn't interested at all in it. But Mark, I was working for Ampex at the time, but I had this thing on a clipshorn, and Mark remembered the sound quality of the little amplifier, which was pretty good. And so he remembered who I was from that 5 year previously. And he wanted, he got interested, and he says, "Hey, John, would you like to work with me? Got this new company and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Sure, why not?" And so we became fast friends. And for a number of years, for a reasonably long time, we were pretty good, close friends. Um, and
And what was the first product that you designed for him?
Well, the first product that I made, the first thing that he did for me actually was the JC, what we call the JC1,
Right.
and it was a preamp. It was a something I had developed. Actually, initially I started off at Ampex, but ultimately at Alembic. I had come up with this special design that was ultra low noise. And, moving coil cartridges require pretty quiet circuits. And people weren't,
Absolutely.
they just didn't know how to do it. And neither did
Yeah.
I really at first until I
So
spent
let me stop you for
several.
1 second. What is the connection between designing microphone preamps? Was that really a good education, designing microphone preamps to designing a head amp for a phono
Well,
cartridge?
in a way, yes, it would be exactly the same thing. It's just that if you want to have I wanted to eliminate uh, the step-up transformer for moving coil cartridges at the time. They weren't
Yeah.
very good at the time. And so I wanted to eliminate the transformer, but you just couldn't do that. Remember, you remember the PAS3 and all. They were
Yeah.
12AX7 inputs. I mean, they were noisy comparatively speaking. You couldn't just plug in an Ortophone cartridge directly into a
No.
dyno. It was too noisy. They used to have like 100-to-1 step-up transformer between the Ortophone, stylus, I mean, coil, and the preamp.
100 to 1?
Yes, originally it was 100-to-1, and then they
Wow.
changed it to 50-to-1, and then I think they kept it there for a long time. And now, of course, we have higher output moving coil cartridges. But in those days, 50 microvolts was the standard.
Hmm.
That was for standard level,
Yeah.
3.54. I mean, that's all it was, 50 microvolts. Well, man, that's a low level. So
Yep.
I worked on when I was for years I'd worked on how to make ultra low noise electronics. And I finally figured it out. In 1968, I had it pretty much figured out, but I didn't have the topologies figured out. In other words, I could build something brute force that was quiet, but I couldn't do it elegantly. And then when I was when I was with Alembic, I came up with an elegant solution, which was ultimately patented, that I could use that didn't cost a whole lot to make, and it was very, very quiet. And so Mark got a hold of that. I showed him what I was doing. I didn't know what else to do with it, and Mark ran with it and became this. We took it to the Audio Engineering Society in New York in
Right.
autumn of '73, and in that case, nobody believed it. I mean, they all thought it was must have a secret transformer built inside or something. And so
And
that's
and so what parts were in there that were how did you do that? What you were using the normal bipolar transistors and
well,
capacitors?
you have to know which. See this machine behind me here.
Yeah.
This thing. This is a noise analyzer. This is a transistor noise analyzer, and I had one of those. Actually, an older model of that, but Ampex had it, and I had access to it. In fact,
Ah.
direct access to it. So I tested every part that would come through from the different manufacturers.
Wow. And you rejected a
Manufacturers are
lot,
coming in
right?
with, their new product, and I found some parts that were not specified as low noise. But under the conditions of a moving coil, which is a low impedance drive, they were quieter than the standard low noise parts. That's one
Hmm.
of the things that the people, even Ortophone or anybody else, they couldn't do it. They kept screwing up because they kept using so-called low noise parts, but which were fairly noisy from a low impedance point of view.
Yeah.
feeding source. So I found these parts, and I kind of kept them a secret for a few years. And then I
Why not?
offered it to Wireless World. I actually got published indirectly in Wireless World in the early 70s. A reader, Mr. Curl, recommends the blah, 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 and it's true. But that, and because it was a kind of a secret. So for 3 or 4 years, I didn't know what to do with what I knew.
Yeah.
I couldn't build anything with them that was unless I work with another manufacturer. So when Mark
Yeah.
came aboard, he was very good for me because he did precision work. He really built nice stuff, and he at the time he got sloppy in the old as the years went by.
Yeah.
But for a while there, he was pretty good, and
And you were a contract worker for him, right? You were
well, I was a consultant. I mean, what I was supposed to do is on a handshake.
yeah.
I'm supposed to get some money. $5 a
That could work.
unit.
That could work.
Well, yeah. Well, it's not so good. It's
Well, maybe not. Okay.
I've been burnt pretty good, and Mark
Yeah.
was burnt me good too, in the
Yeah.
end. But it took years before this actually generated.
And
And so,
then you met Richard Schramm somewhere along the line there. Or was
oh, that was years later.
so what
Oh,
happened
yeah.
in between Mark? What happened between meeting Mark, getting burned by Mark, and then what happened?
Well, see, I was after the wall of sound. This is where it really starts, where we would normally start this conversation. The Mark um, came in, and we had just designed the JC2. And the JC2 was basically the line amp for the Grateful Dead, dumbed
Oh,
down a little bit to be plus or minus 15 volts instead of plus or minus 24 volts. And it was, and
in a shiny cabinet, in a shiny case.
well, and not so much the cabinet, these were all in sealed modules. Mark was very good.
Oh.
He had
Hmm.
learned how to make a epoxy module that you couldn't see what was inside.
Oh.
We made these modules, and nobody knew what we were doing.
He
And
potted them, in other words.
huh?
He potted them.
Exactly.
Really.
Well, we used a special epoxy, a thermal epoxy that had heat with conductive you know material. As far
Right.
as it was better than the normal epoxy. And these modules we had several versions of it. And the Grateful Dead module was the same module.
Oh.
It just different specs on it. And then Mark used that, and then I had to design a very low noise, because the module that I made for the Grateful Dead was not particularly super low noise. So I had to build a super low noise module for the phono stage for the
Hmm.
JC2. And so
That became your
that's what,
specialty, right? Phono stages became your specialty at one point along, because that's
well,
really
I was interested in phono stages for a long time. But I moved on. See, I moved over to Europe at that time. I went in
keep
1974.
going back to Europe. It's a good idea.
Well, I was
Thinking
lucky.
about it
I
myself.
worked with the guy, John Meyer. You've heard of Meyer?
Yes, of course, we talked
Meyer
about
Sound.
this.
Well, John Meyer had this project that he found. He was very good at finding projects like this, better than I ever could be. But he found this project in Switzerland where they wanted to build a recording studio for the Montreux Jazz Festival.
Ah, yeah, the famous
And
smoke on the
because
water.
they had lost, they'd been burnt down, the one that they had, and
That's
they were
smoke on the
building a
water.
new.
That's a very famous, that's a very famous song.
Yeah. And so we got the contract, the Institute for Advanced Musical Studies, which was the place. It was a classical music institute. So I
Yeah.
moved from the rock and roll world to the classical music world. And I actually was living with the students, and it was all acoustic, of course, except for our recordings. And that's what we did, you know. I mean, and Meyer and I, he built the acoustics, and the speakers and so forth, and
Yeah.
I had to build the electronics that go
Oh,
with it, as well as the studio boards and all the other stuff. We
yeah.
had technicians, we had money, we were given
Sure.
hundreds of
Did you
thousands
meet
of
Claude
dollars.
Knobs? Did you meet Claude Knobs while you were there?
Oh yeah, I knew Claude.
Yeah. What a
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah. He was very interested in my technician. I remember that. Uh, Claude was.
Right. So then when that adventure was over, you came back to the States?
Yeah, after 3 years, really, you know. I didn't come back to the United States until 1976, end of 76.
Uh-huh.
I moved from from there. I worked for a manufacturer in Switzerland for making studio boards for Paris recording studios,
Huh.
Parisian recording. And we built studio boards. His name was Gunter Loof. And Gunter and I worked together almost a year. And we built a loudspeaker system, multi-way and all, but it didn't sound as good as I was hoping it would.
Yeah.
And but we did the work, and then I moved back. Then I moved to London and worked there for 6 months with Ira Gale. And
Oh,
Ira Gale, and he,
very famous turntable, right?
oh
And
yeah, he had a really cool turntable. He didn't
yeah,
really
I
do
had one
that.
here.
Yeah, and
And speakers.
and he made these speakers, and
Yeah.
I lived right in Mayfair. Boy, it was really fancy, and worked on a power amp for him, developed a power amp prototype, but it never got built. Beyond the um, the prototype. So it was a wasted effort in some ways.
And it happens, right? You start a
Oh,
project,
it happens a
doesn't come to
lot.
fruition. What can you do, you know?
No, it happens a lot. It's not it. A lot of times people get it. I'm very exacting. I'm not gonna.
I think we know that. I think that goes with your territory that you're
Yeah,
exacting.
that's right. And people usually respect that. If they
Of
don't,
course.
they're going to be in trouble.
Okay,
So
so then you move back to the States after that, after Ira Gale.
yeah, after I regale and all that, I went up to Finland to work with Matti Otola, who was a
Oh,
mentor of mine, for a month during that summer of sort of a break in.
now he's the guy that some people should know. He's the guy that really did the research on TIM distortion, correct?
Exactly. And we wrote a paper, he and I and another guy wrote a paper. That's which was presented at the Audio Engineering Society that fall in New York. And so
That was
that's
a big deal. Let's stop there. That was a big deal because I remember that it was like, well, we never measured this before, so it doesn't exist. And people were
right,
complaining about the sound of solid state amplifiers. But
right. We had found a solution. We had found one of the solutions. There were two of the solutions, and Marty Otola found both of them. And one was called TIM. And
right.
then the second solution, which never got really finalized, is called FIM, or phase intermodulation. And
And it was controversial, right, John? It was controversial. A lot of people didn't believe in this. They thought it was just some hype.
yeah, yeah. Well, we really proved it beyond the shadow of a doubt by making in fact, I did a lot of the measurements, we made like pseudo, phono stages, and then we would show the TIM being generated. by a typical phono stage.
And that
And
was one
then
that was one of the
or line stage.
that was one of the big advancements in solid state amplification, correct? And
Yes, it
people,
was.
yeah, let's
Yes,
not
it was.
let's not just keep moving along. That was a big deal as far as I remember.
Well, yeah, I owe a lot to Marty in that respect. He was see the basic ideas that he had um, actually espoused. I won't say he invented, but he wrote a paper in 1970. So we're going all the way back to 1970 for the IEEE. That's the real engineering journal, you know,
Sure. Yep.
and better than the AES, bigger and badder. And he wrote this paper in which he talked about two things that were important. One was this slew rate change, you know,
Yep.
getting it really fast, change. But the second thing was, and this happened almost coincidentally, was the um, open loop bandwidth of the what we call the open loop bandwidth. Where if you didn't have if you didn't have a feedback loop connected, what would be the open loop frequency? And generally speaking, it was pretty low in solid state, and in tubes it was pretty high. So we noticed that tubes always had a high open loop bandwidth. And we had most of the solid state because we could use more feedback by the compromises that have to be made. It always had a lower open loop bandwidth. So one of the things that the Grateful Dead modules did, the ones that made it successful as far as electronics was concerned, was that it had an open loop bandwidth of 20,000 cycles. I deliberately did that as well as so it had a TIM, it had a slew rate of 100 volts per microsecond, which was almost phenomenal at the time.
Yeah.
It was 10 times faster than most anything, and it had this open loop bandwidth of 20,000 cycles, which was sometimes 100 times faster than 100 times more than most of the op amps that were available at all, even
Wow.
discrete ones. So guess what? That was the secret set of ingredients to making a successful audio circuit. You know,
Hmm.
separate from a video or a, you know, servo or something like that.
Yeah. So you left Finland and then you went where?
Well, I came back of course England for a while, and then I finally went back to the United States. I got a gig at Gibson of all places. They had hired. They actually paid my way across the Atlantic to work with them for a week, and I did that.
Wow.
And it was interesting. They were trying to make a solid state version of the Fender amplifier. And you know what? They did a pretty good job in some ways. But what they failed to do is the bean counters got in and took the
Of course.
ICs that were very new and a little bit expensive, not terribly, but a couple of bucks a piece or something. And they insisted that we use the cheaper parts, and they destroyed the
Of
whole
course.
process.
Of course.
And then,
And it
so
was all to get rid of tubes. For what reason other than that it was an older technology, but that, tube
well, a lot of
amplifier.
people,
Yeah.
you know, well, yeah, but you know, remember, tubes are fragile and they tend to break when you ship them and this and that and the
Yeah.
other. So the Dead had a fair amount of trouble that way too.
Yep. Hey, let me
Although
let me ask you a
we would have
question.
stayed with tubes if we could have in their power amps. We would have stayed with tubes if
Yeah.
they would have. But I mean, not Ampex.
Do you
Macintosh
remember?
refused to make them. They decided they closed down their assembly lines for tubes and said, "Screw it, you know, we're just going to make solid state." And it
Yep.
wasn't as good, but we couldn't do anything about it.
I remember that. I bought some of that stuff. So let me ask you a question. Do you remember the Young and Marsh article about picking capacitors? Was that a
Oh
big
yeah.
deal?
Oh, that was a great article. Oh yeah, that was I actually partially contributed to it, but they didn't give me any I wasn't part of their deal. Rick Marsh is still a colleague of mine, and so is Walt Jung.
Yeah. Are they
And
still around? Are they still around?
yeah, they're still alive, both of them.
Oh, they'd be interested to talk to, I bet you. Because I remember when that came out, I went out and got all new capacitors for my Hafler DH101. I replaced every capacitor in there. I didn't know what the capacitors were doing, so I just said, "All right, I'll replace all of them." And I ended up with this DH101 that weighed like 30 pounds. But the difference in the sound when I turned it on was like
Oh yeah.
crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's what I found. Now, the way I found out about capacitors was a little bit roundabout. It was a few years before. In fact, it was 1973 or
A
no,
lot happened to you in
1974.
1973, John. A lot of
Huh?
stuff happened to you in
No,
19.
actually, it was in 74.
Okay, same
Because
thing.
the Institute for Advanced Musical Studies had sent John Meyer and me both back to the States to attend a class at Tektronix in Portland or Beaverton on this machinery we bought from them, $50,000 FFT machine, and we didn't know how to run it properly. So actually gave us a course. And during one of the lunch hours there, when I was, they sent me, showed me around the plant, and these guys were working on a capacitor tester where they were
Oh,
actually trying to use one of the oscilloscope screens to measure capacitance, like a measurement tool. Now, it
yeah.
wasn't nearly as accurate as a meter would be, but what it did was it separated the good from the bad capacitors. And when you put a ceramic capacitor in there, the darn screen would go crazy. It would literally create loop-de-loop type things. I mean, really strange stuff, which didn't look like a capacitor to me, and it certainly didn't track as a capacitor. So what happened was I realized that ceramic capacitors, especially, were really, really bad. And they were one of the reasons why the Grateful Dead mixer, remember, failed because Ron
Ah,
Wickersham, and I can't take credit for this one, had bought a bunch of these ceramic capacitors as coupling capacitors. And he had
which is a
put them
critical
in,
part.
because they were small. They used to be expensive little things, and they were bipolar, you didn't have to worry about. And we thought we could get away with them, and we couldn't. And we had to get rid of them all. I mean, that's one of the reasons that there aren't. It wasn't me. It wasn't my ICs as much as it was, or the IC I selected, which was still the
Yeah.
best of its kind. It was the darn coupling capacitors that killed the project.
And
Killed.
that's an important part, right? Because you hear that, right?
Oh, well, of course. And we didn't know. No, nobody knew. The manufacturers wouldn't tell us. We had to make our own test equipment to be able to measure this stuff. Well, here was Tektronix making something, and I learned what they did because they showed me. They weren't trying to hide it from me. And we had bought the same equipment, the same, same piece of, we call it a curve tracer. And we modified our curve tracer, and John Meyer and I were starting to measure capacitors. So we measured capacitors back in 74, where, because, and made sure that our capacitors didn't have too much trouble.
Yeah.
Same thing, see? So,
It was like those days were like the Wild West in a lot of ways.
yes.
Sounds like.
Yeah. Well, they don't want to tell you, you've heard of specs, people, they avoid the specs that don't make their stuff look good. Manufacturers are trying to sell the stuff, they're trying to hide the problems. Well,
So,
Mark Levinson didn't have that problem exactly. Mark Levinson used capacitors, but he had already gone to really good capacitors. They were called polycarbonate at the time. They don't make them as much as they used to. Now we use
mm,
polypropylene, but they used to. That's what we used between coupling, because everybody had to couple between stages still.
yeah.
At least we thought we did. One of the
Now,
Yeah, go ahead.
let's move forward a little bit because we spent a lot of time talking about all this period of time in the 70s, and I think a lot of people that are watching this know you more from more contemporary designs, and I think we probably should go there so we can talk about like the present and the past 10 or 20 years.
Well,
So
yeah, go ahead.
let's move forward from Tektronix and from the 70s and Mark Levinson, and then you met Richard Schramm. That was the next step that I think that most people know from Parasound. Would that be true?
Well, there were all kinds of people in between. They were all kinds. There was Noel Lee, you've heard of him, and Symmetry, the Symmetry crossover. That
Okay,
was
yeah, I
in the
heard.
late 70s. Then John Mayer and I colluded again to make uh, stuff for Crystal Clear Records. Crystal
Oh,
Clear, the
we all
direct
know
disc
that. We
people.
all know that. Sure.
And what we
Well,
did was I built these modules, fast and all. They weren't my best of the best, but they were buildable, easily buildable. And there were little plug-in cards, and you had a card that plugged in a little gold on gold to a gold on gold socket, like the old computers used to have.
sure.
And I mean, like a
And these were preamplifiers.
well, they were like they're basically an IC replacement. In other words,
I
they were a bigger card. They were like a 2 by 4 inch card, but they replaced an IC so that
oh,
we didn't have to use the ICs because the ICs were never as good as my discrete designs. So
well, that makes sense.
Meyer and I built this 16 channel, ultimately 16 channel console for Crystal Clear Records. And so most of the Crystal Clear stuff was done with that.
Oh,
And then
those sounded good. Those records sounded good.
they sure
I
they
got a
did.
bunch of those.
Meyer was working full time for Crystal Clear at the time. See, he came back from from Europe earlier than I did. I found a job in Europe after the institute closed. And what happened is Meyer went home, and I got him this job at because I knew the guy at Crystal Clear, and he'd tried to hire me before, and I couldn't do anything because I was in Europe. So I got this a reference to John Meyer, and John got this job of working the record, the doing the direct disc recording. And so John worked on really hard on that, and then we built this, so we were doing a lot of pro work then,
Sure.
and in the 70s, and then Noel Lee came in the system, and he wasn't doing cables then. He was trying to do something, but he created a company called Symmetry, and we built a little crossover, a transient perfect crossover. And I had gotten the idea originally from John Meyer, who actually got it from another source, and we'd used it in Europe with John Myers and my speaker system. And it was a crossover that was sort of transient perfect. It was so we made that for a few years, and then Noel finally decided he wasn't good at the running a small business as he was in promoting cable. He got into the cable thing and he dropped the Symmetry thing, which is smart of him because he made a lot of money.
No kidding.
And
And
and he was good at it too. I mean, he was
sure.
a natural promoter.
No one had thought of that for some reason, you know. I mean, everybody was using lamp cord pretty much at that point,
Oh,
right?
it was terrible. Well, the Japanese were doing something a little different. I went to work in late, because there were a whole lot of things that are in between. Real quick, I work for Harman Kardon and I build a bunch of stuff for them. They never build any of my stuff. In other words, I built the prototypes and tested them and all, but they didn't build anything of mine. And then they
Too
hired my.
expensive to, too expensive to build, or
No, they didn't either like the sound of it, or they dropped the project, or just something. I had a lot of office politics going on there.
always.
And then I moved, and then I worked for Mobile Fidelity, and I built a new electronics for their 30 IPS machine. I built a 30 IPS
Did
mastering recorder
I
for
had no
them.
idea. I had no idea that
Yeah,
you
two
were.
or three machines actually. So I spent a year or two with them, and then from there I
Was that
went.
the pre-music days when they were just recording thunderstorms
Oh
and train?
no, it was 1979 when I
Oh,
and I
Herb Belka was
we
there at that
did
point, right?
oh goodness, who do we do? Somebody really important.
Not
Uh,
Herb Belkin, and who else?
no, it was yeah, Belk. Well, but that wasn't the important thing. The group that we were working with was uh, geez, I feel bad. Tusk. They did Tusk. Do you know what?
Ken Calais?
No, come on. There were two women in the group, and
Oh, in the group. Oh, you mean Stevie Nicks and
yes, exactly.
Oh, the artists. I thought you were talking about the people behind the scenes. Oh,
No. The artist that group was trying to get a final mix for um
that
yeah,
was a weird,
my
that was a weird
30th
sounding record.
machine. Huh?
That was a weird sounding record. I thought.
You know why?
Why? You know
They
this.
didn't select my tape recorder.
Oh, was it
They
was
went
it
to
recorded digitally?
digital.
Yeah, that's right.
You should have heard the mixer. Listen, I was there at the
Oh, this
recording
is great.
studio, and it was wonderful. They had it all mixed out, all Dolby and all that. But when they had it, it was beautiful, just like the previous.
Yeah, the great ones. Yeah,
It was a great one.
rumors and
And then we did a shoot off between like my machine and this 30. I mean, this other machine, digital machine,
yeah.
16-bit, and I could hear it, but they couldn't.
They didn't hear it.
No, or they thought actually it sounded better than my machine.
Probably because they were predisposed to.
Well, the interesting thing is that I knew it would fail. I knew from what I heard. Like you can tell me now what you think of that Tusk album, and the music was wonderful within the realm of
Yes,
reason.
interesting.
It
Interesting.
just was this digitized. Because we still can't make digital perfect yet. We keep
It's getting
trying.
better. Getting better.
It's getting better. But
Yeah,
it's been how many years? This is 1979, man.
yeah.
That's 30, 20, geez,
It's
21 years
it's a
and
long
then
time.
25 more. That's a
It's a
long
long time.
time ago.
It is getting better. It is getting better, I have to say. You know, the
Oh,
record I put out was recorded digitally and put on vinyl, and it sounds great. Uh, I had to do it digitally, and it sounds really good.
I had a Franceschi record that I swore was this female singer, you know who she was, is, but
Yeah.
she back in the 90s, I think they even recorded her digitally. I didn't think well, I thought that they did it analog. I didn't when I listened to the record and all, I thought it was analog. And I've been
Yeah,
fooled too.
good microphones are the key to good recordings at some
Well,
point.
they help. I don't know. What do you think is a good microphone?
What do I think is a good microphone? There's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
depth
especially.
microphones, and there's good. The Neumann is the
Do you
Neumann
like the
that
Neumanns? Do you like
for voices. You
uh,
know,
other kinds of ribbons? Well,
yeah. I mean, I'm not. I don't pretend to be a recording engineer or have a.
I see. Okay,
That's not my thing. I try to hire people that do good good work.
I see. Well, I do know that recording can, microphones do matter.
Yeah.
But a lot, and and most microphones aren't very accurate anyway. At
No,
least
the idea of putting a symphony orchestra into a couple of microphones is an absurd thing, but yet it can sound great, right? It can sound great, right?
the only time that we saw we Crystal Clear did a few recordings like that with the B&K mics.
Yeah.
And we hung them. They were hung in Boston Symphony Hall, up in the air. And they used three mics, I think, but they were the B&K mics, which are very good, but not absolutely great. They have a slight metallic or whatever quality to them, even though I can't see why, but in the measurements or anything.
So let's get back to the subject at hand, which is your career. That's the subject at hand.
Okay. Well, anyway, I went through a whole series of people like that. Then Dennison came by, and we created the Dennison JC80, which was a preamp, and that we spent a couple of years on. And then I went to work for Dave Wilson, making a master recorder electronics for him. That was like 1983. And I virtually went bankrupt doing it. And I had to go to work for real companies that I actually went to work as a full-time guy. They had pulled me in out of the blue because my reputation, because they had a project that they wanted to get done, and they hired me for a year and a half. And then I went to work for actually Saul Morantz, and we created a company. I was vice president of engineering. So, and we built a
That
power
was
and a preamp.
after he had sold Morantz and he started a
Oh
company.
yeah, he couldn't use his name anymore, of
Yeah,
course.
what was it called? I forgot.
Lineage. It was called Lineage.
Lineage, right? I remember seeing those products at an AES or
Yeah,
a
that's
hi-fi
right.
show in New York. Yeah, I remember that. It
Yeah,
was exciting because Saul Morantz was back in the business, and you were there,
yeah. He
and
was
you were
president. I was vice president.
oh,
Engineering. Yeah. I wouldn't move to the East Coast because they wouldn't pay me enough to relocate. But so didn't dare do that. But
did those products ever go into production? Or are
no,
they?
no, they don't. I don't
Oh,
think they ever bought a soldering iron. I think it was all mine. I had my own lab in Berkeley, and everything was done by me and
yeah.
my people.
But so there were prototypes. I remember they had prototypes at the
Well,
show.
we went pretty far with them. But the problem is that there was some sort of funding problem, and then
Oh,
during the stock market crash in '87, apparently many of the people who were involved with the funding dropped right out, and they just pulled the plug on the company.
uh, that's
Didn't tell me, of course.
of course. Why
Owing
would they
me
tell you?
money. I mean, and my technicians were still working and all, but they didn't. And
And you were paying your technicians, and so you were paying on your side, and
I
you
had to pay my tech. You know what I paid my technicians in? One of them, anyway. FETs. I had a lot of FETs because I had to buy them for this for Marantz. I mean,
wow,
for Lineage.
yeah.
And I had this big bag of FETs, thousands of them. So I paid my tech in FETs, and because they were great FETs, and he was willing to do that because I owed him, and I didn't have the money myself. I was stuck, man. I was like,
An early version of cryptocurrency.
exactly. And guess what? The guy passed away and gave me all his FETs back.
Oh,
So now I have them all in a box.
are they useful for anything?
Absolutely. They're worth
Oh,
$25 a piece.
uh,
These things. I mean, they're really, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
so
And
is getting solid state parts becoming the way it was with tubes for a while, where you can't get these transistors? You got to
absolutely.
word
You
them.
can't even get these parts anymore. It's linear. I mean, Parasound got a bunch of them by me harassing them about it and getting insight to it, but they giving them inside operational ability to get
Yeah.
the parts. But the parts went from like 30 cents or something like that a piece to $20, $10 a piece or something,
Wow.
even
That's
$25 a piece.
so you can't design budget priced products with that kind of
You
parts
can't.
cost. No.
And so the Toshiba went out of business, you see. They decided that they didn't want to make solid state anymore, or I would say solid state FETs anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe they wanted to make ICs or something else, maybe more complicated things, whole modules. But you see, a FET or a transistor takes a lot of silicon space for what it does. It's just the one thing. You could put
Yeah.
1,000 or 1,000,000 little miniature transistors on
At
there and
this
make
point,
it.
yeah. Yeah.
And so they didn't want to do, they went out of business. They said, we're going out of business. And the only guy with the foresight and the nerve to do anything was this fellow from Air. He's
Charlie
passed,
Hansen?
huh?
Charlie Hansen? Did you say Air?
Air. Charlie.
Charlie, yeah.
Charlie's the one that literally mortgaged his house and went and bought these 500,000 FETs,
Wow.
at least, maybe 1,000,000. And
Really?
he was optimistic. Let's just say this. He thought he could use them all. And he couldn't really, but he bought
A
them all.
million.
And he got a good price, right? Because he
Yeah.
got
If you buy a million of anything, you get a good price.
yeah. And so Charlie, as the years went on, couldn't needed the money for and that's where Parasound has its FETs now. They got them from
Oh,
Charlie's stash
wow. I see.
because if they're all used up and across the world. We searched the whole world for these darn things as time went on, and I told Parasound at the time. I started with Parasound in what 89, 91,
Yeah.
something. Anyway, but the thing is that I was using the same parts, but the I kept saying, Richard, you've got to buy more parts. You're going to run out of these things, and they're not going to be available anymore. And Richard said, my people say, and that was the people in Taiwan, said they haven't more than enough. Well, guess what? We ran out 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
And then, and they said, gee, John, is there anything else we can use? I said, no, not really, not without compromise, serious compromise to the design. And
Wow. People don't think about these things. That they think about, okay, tubes you can't get, tubes are hard to get, but transistors, well, that's always going to be available, but it's not true.
no, it's not true.
Huh.
It was interesting that the Japanese made all kinds of FETs. Every major company that we could think of made a ultra low noise, ultra high quality FET. Every one of them back in the late 70s. And then they all dropped out. They just all dropped out. And then Toshiba just took over. Toshiba grabbed the market because they could do it better than they had a better part and they had a cheaper part. They could make it cheap. And
Wow.
everybody else just went out of business, stopped making them. And then it's kind of that single seller kind of problem. And then one day Toshiba pulled the plug. So,
So
eh,
what's the story now? Well, who's making these parts now?
well, there is a company in the Bay Area that's making a similar part, and they make them for Mark Levinson and people like that.
And
Uh,
Mark Levinson, the company, you mean
yeah,
For
mhm,
Harman.
yeah.
Oh, domestic
They
product.
buy them from them, and they don't do everything. They just make the N channel, what we call N channel pair, match pair. They don't make the P channel match pair, which is
Oh,
the thing that Toshiba could do.
so
And
who makes those?
huh?
Who makes those? You need both, right?
Well, they tried to make them, and they made something, but never as good as Toshiba. They just
Wow.
didn't quite make it. There are reasons for this. See, Toshiba was an enclosed facility, you might say, from beginning to end, kind of foundry to the end product. It was all in-house.
They were vertically integrated. Okay.
But the other manufacturers, like Linear Systems, who's the one I'm talking about, they basically have to send their stuff out to get certain processes done.
Um,
And so they do a certain thing, they fire it up, and then they get it to a certain point, and then they send it off to somebody else, and those other somebody else's may not really care as much. And
so
they
when you design products, when you design the ultra high end products for like Constellation, where do those parts come from?
same Toshiba.
Same. These are the old parts that you're still using.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Well,
who's
they
got
had their own. They had their own.
who's they?
Peter Madnick.
Peter is another hoarder of these parts. Okay. It's
Well,
pretty
he
crazy
knew
though.
enough to buy 35,000 of them or something. He had enough. Now,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, they had to buy parts from me for their top of the line phono stage because I'm the only one that had enough.
You had them in-house, your own stash.
Yeah.
You guys are all hoarders because these things are not being made anymore. It's a crazy situation. So
Well, I lost all my parts back in 1991. I had, a firestorm and I lost
oh
thousands and thousands of
oh
FETs. But I had to start all over. But see, the FETs were still relatively cheap. So I'd buy 100 or 200 here and there. And I kept building my stock up. Well, what happened is that uh, I had these extra parts, and and Constellation needed an ultra low noise front end,
yeah.
quieter than the one I actually originally designed for them by 3 dB or so, just to meet a spec. And so I sold them my parts, but I ran out of this particular selection of parts. And when I came around, they said, we'd like to have more parts. I said, look, I'll have to select them out of my own separate stash, and I'll have to hand select them, and I'm not going to do it for free. And they just said, oh, screw you, I mean, kind of, well,
How can we charge $80,000 for an amplifier if we have to?
yeah, they did that. They did that. A lot of that was in the chassis and stuff.
And so let me ask you this question. Is it possible that, I know like Kevin Deal, the tube guy, goes around the world and he finds these stashes of tubes in these
Yeah.
warehouses, left over from World War II, these big stashes. Is it possible that there are solid state hoarders around the
Yeah.
world that you're going to discover that have these stashes of FETs or bipolar, whatever it is that you need that will be
It's quite
discovered that you
possible.
can?
It's quite
Crazy.
possible. I've certainly have hoarded enough to do several runs. I might do a run for another company, like a new phono stage. I have enough parts to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, but most people,
Okay, so what do you think of Class D switch mode power supplies? Is this a good thing
I
now?
don't use them. I don't use
I know
switch.
you don't, but what do you think of? Is it getting better?
Uh, Anything's getting better, I guess. I've been around switch mode power supplies for a very long time.
Yeah.
I was there in 1970, no, 1966.
What?
We were making a switch mode power supply where I was working. We were working on a military project, and it had a power supply, and we had a separate group that made and it was funny because the damn thing would blow up all the time, and it was throw capacitors across the room. I'm telling you.
And
And
Class D amplification, what's your opinion of that?
it can be pretty good, but and certainly Bruno knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And but I've never been completely happy. But then I've never been completely happy with anything. I mean, vacuum tubes have certain qualities I really like that I can't quite get.
That's a great way to end this whole thing. I've never really been happy with anything. What about these gallium nitride
Well,
amplifiers?
they are faster. They are faster, and therefore they can be utilized with more efficiency and with less heat sinking or even no heat
and
sinking.
what is that exactly? In all honesty, I hear the name gallium nitride. I don't know what that exactly is.
It's a mixture of atoms,
Yeah,
between gallium and nitro, I guess, nitrogen.
but
And
but it's not
I don't know what the formula is. It's
it's not a
GAN
transistor.
or
It's
like
not a transistor. It's some other.
no, it's a material. See, it's faster than silicon. Silicon has a mobility. All products, all semiconductors have a mobility. The mobility is the speed in which electrons can flow between point A and point B.
I see.
And silicon's pretty good, but gallium nitride's faster. And just inherently faster all by itself. And so the just by changing the material, they were able to improve the part significantly.
And they seem to be putting these things in vacuum tubes to give it a certain look. Have you seen those amplifiers?
Well,
That's just nonsense, right? I mean, it's just
well, I like the look of a vacuum tube design,
yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I can't get into that.
I I keep one around just to look at. It's a Philips mini watt ECC
Is
80.
that it there?
Yeah, this is a Philips mini watt.
What does it do? The
Sits on
whole
my.
amplifier?
This came out of my G36. My
Oh
G36.
no, come on, a G36.
Yeah, that's what it came out of. It
Yeah,
was
but it's
no.
a 12AX7 or something, or ECC
Yeah,
86.
ECC. Yes, it's probably 12AX7, but it was noisy. I was having noise in my tape
Oh yeah,
recorder.
well they get noisy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
they
didn't fix
never
it.
were quiet,
It didn't
but they
fix
get
the
this one
problem,
over F noise or
and
popping.
I'm having the whole thing, all the capacitors replaced. I got a capacitor kit, and I'm replacing all the capacitors in that tape recorder, and it
Oh,
should be good when I'm.
G36, but that's a nice unit.
Yeah, I got it at a garage sale for
G36 is a good.
$40.
Yeah, that's a hell of a deal.
It's a good garage sale, believe me. All right, this is getting too personal. I think we've is Leslie, you there? How are we doing, Leslie? For time? Are we
Here.
good?
You're doing great, but I think, are you in the 90s yet?
No,
Getting there,
I'm
getting there.
78. Uh,
No,
No,
we're a lot farther along than that.
I think this is
But let me try to get to switch over, okay?
I feel like
I was in the 80s. I was doing all this stuff in the 80s, and then I went to work for a man. I literally went bankrupt, or almost. And working on that Dave Wilson project. And then I went to work
who owns that? Who owns that tape recorder? I hate to interrupt you, but I'm an interrupter. Who owns that tape recorder now? Somebody owns that tape recorder, Dave Wilson's tape recorder.
Dave Wilson does, as far as I know.
Well, he's passed away, so
No, his
uh,
son would
does
probably.
Daryl own that? Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm sure he
Okay,
has.
I'm sorry. I'll be quiet. Okay.
And then there was the lineage thing, and then it was one failure after the other, and then I started making Vendetta. We forgot all about that. See, it's about 1976 or seven. As soon as these guys had dropped me, the lineage people, I had to do something. So I decided to build a Vendetta into a working company, not just a little part-time project. And so I worked for several years building Vendettas. And that's when that came alive.
And that's a legendary product. I mean,
Yeah, it is. It is. And it was one of my best, my finest. And then after that, I made the CTC blowtorch. You've heard of
right.
that.
Another legendary product. And
It is.
can these be made again, or are the parts of those?
No, just by me. And we made about 45 of those. They're even more, difficult to get than the Vendettas.
Yeah.
And then my partner died, the guy who actually was building them. So we stopped making them completely. And then
That'll stop. That'll do it. Yeah.
and then at that time, I had to switch over to, and I was working in parallel with Parasound then. So I was doing a whole bunch of things with Parasound see, we're already in the year 2000 now. And now I have to go back to 1990 or something when I started working with, in parallel as a consultant. I never
Yeah.
went to work. I mean, guys, I never went to the plant, I just worked at home or my apartment or wherever in my lab, and I started building power amps for Parasound, and we had a whole series of power amps.
Now,
Big
did you
little
build?
ones.
You sent them the circuit. You just sent them the blueprints or the circuit
Well, in
design.
a general way, I did, but
Yeah.
actually, they took the original circuit that they grabbed was out of the Toshiba handbook, you know. So,
That Toshiba boy, I'll tell you,
but it
they were
was my
busy.
design. It was my concept, my design, and I had published it, the basic design in 1977 in
Oh,
little called the Audio Amateur, and
I
I had
remember that.
get published because Mark Levinson wasn't paying me, so I
You're
decided to
kidding.
fix him, and I took what I had done for him and basically gave it to the world in 1977. And so
Wow.
the Toshiba saw that, and they took it and they ran with it. And then I started cleaning up what Toshiba had done because they didn't have everything right, and we started improving on their design. And we built all kinds of things with them for all through the 90s. We built big power amps, little power amps, preamps, all kinds of things.
This is in Taiwan,
Yeah,
someplace.
Taiwan.
Yeah, yeah.
And I work with them basically to fax machine. And, I would get the unit in, whatever. And then I would look at it and measure it and see what has to be corrected. And then it'd go back to them, and then they'd make a final release. So we did that for years and years. Still, even today.
Yeah, and those are very popular products. Those phono preamps that you design are very popular products, and people are able to get really good quality for not that much money, and that's good.
Yeah, that's true. In other words, I like to build the really great stuff, if when I can, but it's so expensive. And it's
Well,
almost
yeah,
impossible to give it to anybody else. It's kind of like building a fine watch or something. You
of
just
course.
can't, most people cannot do it, properly. They'll,
When you get to have to design something for somebody and they want a lot of convenience features and it
oh yeah.
compromises performance, how do you deal with that? You just say, well, that's what you want. I'll have to do it for you, or do you ever try?
I had that problem with the
Constellation?
Constellation. They started coming after me, and they're saying, "Well, we want this and we want that." And I said, "Listen, what do you want for sure? Do you want to make a cruising like a Cadillac that's comfortable on the road, or do you want to make a race car?" I thought you wanted to build a race car because
Yeah,
that's what you wanted the world's best. And
yeah.
I said, the only way you're going to do it is by compromising some of these features. And they backed off on some of the stuff,
Well, that's good.
but only some of the stuff. They did a pretty good job with remote control and other things, like the CTC blowtorch. I never got remote control on it. It's a pain in the neck to have to.
Well, John, there was a period of time when remote control started coming into high-end audio, and everybody I knew thought that was like blasphemous.
Oh, I know.
We
We
don't
are
want
all
remote
used to.
control. We want to suffer.
Well, I was happy. I'm happy enough because it is almost impossible not to compromise a little bit, at least every
Yeah.
time you add one of those features. So in Constellation's case, Peter Madnick pretty much handled all that.
Yeah.
And he was pretty good with relays and other things that buffers that helped keep the sound quality respectable,
Yeah.
but it was still very expensive for what it was.
Yeah. Well, it still is. So, do you have a system at home that you listen to on a regular basis, or you don't do that?
Do I have a system? Yeah, I've got a pair of Sashas, and
Oh, yeah.
they're a little dated. They're ones, and I hate the tweeter on the things. I really,
Are you, does your dated one have the inverted dome Focal tweeter in it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's funny. Nothing against Focal, but because their speakers are fine, but as Wilson removed the Focal drivers and put their own drivers in, their products just sounded much, much better.
Oh, I know. I told Dave himself.
Yeah.
I mean, here I am. I mean, I'm looking a gift horse in the mouth. I said, Dave, I don't like that tweeter. Give me I said, I like the other one. I said, you got another one that's made out of silk or something. I said, it's really good, but this one's not so good.
And what did he say?
Oh, poor guy. He had to accept my input.
Well, he
I was
obviously he did
insulting
it.
him.
He did because they got rid of most of those all
Well,
of
he'd
them.
already done it. See, the reason he could give me these Sashas is they were already obsolete.
Oh,
I mean, 2012, they were coming out with a Mark II.
that's right.
And
And
this is a Mark I. This is the end of the line, so he could give me something that's worth almost $30,000,
yeah,
but it wasn't state of the art.
yeah,
And and I couldn't. I know what those inverted. I have a Mark I
yeah,
Wilson Audio Tiny Tot. I've got the same bloody thing
yeah.
problem. And oh yeah, that new tweeter's much better.
Sure, it is. And there's all these people say, well, it's got to be made of beryllium and diamond and all these exotic materials,
Yeah.
but not necessarily. It all depends on what it sounds like.
Oh, it was what, silk or something?
Yeah, so they use a silk dome tweeter. That's
Yeah,
what I got
it
in
was
my speakers.
wonderful.
I love my speakers. I know there's
What
higher
do you
tech.
have now?
I've got the XVXs.
Yeah, see, you got the uptown guys.
I lucked out, man. Quincy Jones bought those for me, so
Yeah, well, that's the kind of way we get things the best.
Well, I don't mean literally. I mean I worked for him.
Oh, I see what you mean.
He
Well,
had a trade. He had a trade
I
deficit
was
with
given it.
me.
Dave was nice enough to say, after all the years that you've worked with us, I
Sure.
gave Dave, that master recorder and also record electronics too. I built some electronics.
Those records sound the Winds of War. That record, it's the bass drum on that recording is unbelievable, amazing.
Yeah.
And those are electronics in there, so that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, it was I've worked for all these different people,
yeah, what an adventure you've had. And so now you're still working for Parasound.
I'm not doing much for Parasound at the moment. I'm still on the payroll, but Darren has taken over the vice presidency, and he
Yeah,
doesn't share with me really very much. He's doing a completely different set of projects.
he's a talented guy, though, don't you think?
He is a talented guy,
Yeah.
so we shall see.
I met him. I met him when he was in high school, and
Really?
he called me up and he said, I'm reading your stuff and I really, like your stuff. I want to get into the high-end audio business. What should I do? And I said, well, don't be like me. You should get a degree in electrical engineering, get yourself something substantial so that if you decide you don't want to stay in this side of the world, you could do something else in electronics. And he did. And I didn't follow up on that too much. And then one day, Bill Lieben called me and said, hey, I want you to meet somebody who's working for PS Audio. Come on over here and interview him. I said, well, why would I want to do that? It's just come. So I sat down with this guy and he said to me, I called you on the phone when I was in high school and you gave me this advice to go to get an electronics degree, and I did, and here I am, and thank you. And you know what? That's one of those great things that you've helped somebody.
Oh, absolutely. I would try to do that for almost, I would say almost the same thing. In
Yeah, of
fact,
course you would.
this physics degree that I have, actually, to be honest with you, I probably should have stuck with engineering. I'm better at it. But I'm not sorry I learned. I learned certain things in studying physics that it's a deeper understanding of matter, you might say,
Yeah.
of what's really going on. And it is valuable to a certain degree. But I'm really a better engineer than I ever was a physicist.
Well, you've done pretty well as an engineer, I would say.
Yeah, they say, yeah.
You are legendary, and your products are legendary, and they will, some of those products stand the test of time and will continue to stand the test of time. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad for that, and I keep working on. We hope that there'll be more. I'm working with IFI. Uh,
Who?
IFI.
Oh, you mean the guys in Vince in
Yeah, I work
oh,
for
he's
them
a
too.
smart guy. There's some great products there, those guys.
Yeah, well, I don't work directly with the engineering staff now, but I'm building a big power amp for them right now.
Oh, oh, cool.
Maybe someday it'll come out. Um, they
That's
keep
that's
telling me
news.
it will.
That's news right there. Where's it going to be built?
In China, I'm sure. Although the prototype's in England right now.
Huh.
So they may make it in England. I really don't know. At that
That's really
price point,
cool.
it may not make any
See, we've made news. We've made some news, ladies and gentlemen, because that's new.
difference. We shall see.
Yeah. Anything else you have coming down the line?
No, not really.
Nothing in the phono preamp. What do you think about transimpedance phono preamps versus voltage?
Well, the original JC1 actually had a transimpedance input,
Really?
the Quasi one,
I didn't know that.
and it worked really well. But I found that transimpedance in my particular setups with Levinson, we tried to go to transimpedance um, in a different way, and it didn't work out as well. It sounded
Hmm.
underwaterish.
Hmm.
And so at the time, this was way back in the early 70s, so middle
Yeah.
70s. So I went away from it and went to
Yeah. I like it now. I've got it built into my phono. I can do either voltage or transimpedance, and
my original Vendetta had a transimpedance connection.
it did.
You could go in with little gold wires, and you could just jumper the wires, and you could.
How many people who own those things knew that? I wonder how many people really knew that.
Well, interestingly enough, Stereophile did because the one that I have now uh, isn't transimpedance input
Oh,
hooked that way initially. So
interesting.
we were doing it that way. So yeah.
Cool. Well, Leslie, what do you say? Are we time for questions or?
Okay, well, you know what's interesting, Michael, you've done such an amazing job with the questions. We didn't have that many questions. There's one question is what music does John Curl listen to? There's that. A lot of them you answered. And then if people have looked in the chat, it's just more information about things. John Hughes has put more information about different things you've been talking about, which is good.
Well, good. So, John, what kind of music do you like to listen to?
Well, female vocalists that I kind of fall in love with. That's kind of how I know when something's really right. If I play a record and I remember what was its name? It was a direct disc. Don't Misunderstand. Remember that one?
Oh, no, that one.
By a black singer. No, that was a song on that. I Have the Music in Me.
Oh, Thelma Houston, of course. That
Elma
record.
Houston,
That's
man, that was beautiful. When it was done right, you could go to different people's setups and play that. And
yeah. I think Bill Shanae was the engineer on that, or he was involved in that one. I think he was.
yeah, he was him.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name. He's passed now, but we used to be friends. Uh, I mean, friendly enough. We'd see each
Yeah.
other at conferences,
Yeah, yeah.
have a drink together or something.
I interviewed Keith Emerson one, from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and I said to him, "So what music do you like to listen to?" And he said, "I don't listen to music anymore. I liked watching the History Channel." It was so
Well, in
disappointing.
all honesty, when you're in the biz, I don't listen like these guys. The people that are literally above the screen here or something.
Yeah,
A
of
lot of
course.
those guys listen far, far, far more. They have much better setups, or not setups, but they have much better uh, record collections and digital setups and on and on and on.
Because
And
you're
they
in the
sit
bit,
there
you're in the
listening to music
business,
all day. I don't do that.
Yeah.
It
I interviewed
becomes
the lead cellist of the Berlin Philharmonic, and I said, "So what do you listen to at home?" And he said, "I don't listen to music at home. I do it at work, and I have had enough of it. I go home and sit and quiet." It was like, okay,
Yeah, I don't blame him.
I don't
Now,
either.
where is he with the Royal Philharmonic?
The Berlin Philharmonic.
Oh, Berlin. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, they're pretty good, You
Yeah,
got
I
to
would
give them
say,
credit.
yes, they're pretty good. They've got a future ahead of them. Yeah, definitely.
Well, are you going to go next year to? I guess you'll go to Vienna.
Vienna, I will go to Vienna if I'm around. I will go to Vienna because it's going to be an interesting show, because I know all the people coming from Asia have to land in Munich and drive all their stuff like 4 hours to get to Vienna because the airport there's no direct flights from Asia. And I know a lot of manufacturers that are going there and scouting out those rooms now to get ready for it.
Hmm.
But Munich. That was such a great place, and yet I remember when the show was at the Kempinski Hotel in Frankfurt. It was like just a small little show, and they announced they were going to move it to this Munich Convention Center, and everybody was saying that's going to be a flop. It can't possibly work. You cannot have high-end audio in a convention center, and yet that worked out to be an amazing location. It was great. It was a great place.
Okay,
So.
we got one question from Brew. Would love to get some insights about operating points, either tube or transistor.
Class A, run Class A. That's my game, my babe.
Get
All
good
else being
tubes.
equal,
Get
run
good
Class
tubes.
A. Vacuum tubes as well if you can. But of course, when you do a vacuum tube, they're limited in their power capability, so it's hard to run pure Class A. Although,
I've got Roger Majeski's hybrid RM200 Mark II. I think it's an FET or JFET input and vacuum tube output. It's a really nice amplifier. He was a good
it's
guy.
not Class A, is it?
No, no, it's a Class
No,
AB.
but a lot of I'm a classical kind of triode kind of guy.
Yeah, but not single-ended where the amplifier where the speaker is modulating the amplifier's power. I
I'd rather not.
Yeah, me neither. I definitely
But
would.
I don't say I don't enjoy the sound of these things, but it's colored.
Yeah, I reviewed these giant amplifiers from Japan. It was like a whole wall of amplifiers. I forgot the brand already, but it was pleasant and syrupy and fun. But as a reviewer, I could never have anything like that.
I understand.
It was not
I'm a
limited.
push-pull kind of guy.
Me
I
too.
really am. I've always been that way. It's because in push-pull Class A, you can get rid of a lot of the inherent harmonic, or inherent nonlinearities. Not all of
Yep.
them, but you can get rid of 50% of them or more.
Yeah.
And you might as well, from the get-go, get rid of them, and then work on it. That way, you don't need as much feedback or apologizing for the amount of distortion you have. And
Okay. Have we answered all the world's questions now? I think we have.
I think so. This is, I think I think I speak for the group. Everyone is
everybody's
really,
saturated now. At least I am. I'll tell you.
it looks like you're getting tired. It's getting late.
I have to go to bed. It's 11 o'clock on the East Coast.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
Well,
for
thanks a
doing
lot,
this,
Michael.
Michael.
That staying up for this.
Fantastic. And if anybody missed anything, it's going to be on YouTube within the next few
Great.
weeks.
I learned a lot, John. I appreciate talking to you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Leslie. I'm an interrupter though, but I just want to say I really learned a lot about you, both in your history and your philosophy, and it was great talking to you. So thank you for talking to me.
Well, yeah, well, thank you. I wish I would have thought, written it down like on a list. And one.
You're gonna have regrets, and have no regrets. It was great. Okay, no regrets.
Well, there's so much, There's some. I mean, I've had more than 50 years, 55 years of this stuff,
Of course.
So,
But what a career! What great stuff you've done.
yeah.
That's how everything developed. I don't know if there's anyone that knew more people or worked for more people than you did, John. It's pretty incredible. And I think
Yeah.
there's probably many, many, many more hours of stories. I know I've heard them.
Yes. Well,
I've heard
You have to ply him with liquor and get him out of him. Get those stories out of him.
well, that's what they used to say. The other designers used to say, "Give Curl a drink and he'll tell you anything." And it's true. And I'm talking about one of the more major designers that He actually said that behind my back, but I heard about it. And he's right. The stuff comes so easily in my case, with what I'm good at, that it doesn't seem right to hide it. It's
No.
like, ask a question, sure, why not? And then they run off with one guy in England, and you know who he is if I told you. I had a party at his house, and I gave him the complementary differential design in 1972, and he tried to patent it on me.
Oh, I know that must be.
And Bongiorno and other guys had already come up with the design in parallel, but I'd done it in '68, so I figured 4 years, it was about time to give it away to a friend, and then he tried to patent it. I called him up, said, "Hey, man, are you trying?" I mean, I'm talking long distance telephone from Sausalito or whatever to London. And he says, "Yeah, but it didn't go through, so we can still be friends." Yeah, sure.
So are there going to be any new circuits developed that are like radically new things that we've not thought about in all of this? Is it possible?
I hope so. I'm sure there is. We've always had that, like everything is done.
Yeah.
And but I think it'll be in the Class D realm and in digital that'll be the really breakthroughs. Still can't figure out why we can't make almost perfect digital or effectively perfect digital.
Yeah, all these people I know who just think that this analog thing is nutty and playing an old record, and I bring them over here and I sit them down, and it only takes about 5 minutes before they go, "Oh man, yeah, I hear it. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, we got to figure out what that is and be able to put it in a digital form somehow.
It's funny. I made a bunch of recordings for a guy, and I went to Abu Dhabi and met this guy. He's an old digital guy, and I put on a stick. I put all these 96K 24-bit recordings that I made, and I gave it to him. And he called me a week later. He said, "I've got 8,000 files, digital files, and I've got your stick. And my wife and I sit here, and we play are those recordings from your turntable, and I don't hear the problems. I don't hear distortion. I don't hear noise. I don't hear rumble. I just hear this music that it compels us to listen. What is that?" And I said, I don't know what that is, but I know it's true. I know that people, when they hear a record, they relax into it, and it's calming, and it's there. And when they play digital, as good as it is, it's really good. Yeah, this is really good. But you can see their shoulders going up, and they're just not. And what is that? I don't know what that is. Is it a timing thing?
A fellow named Dr. Diamond one time wrote a book.
Oh.
And do you ever meet Dr. Diamond?
Mark Levinson came to my house, the Mark Levinson person. He came to my house with Richard Berwin's box. You know about that?
Yeah.
Richard Berwin has this box and Mark Levinson said, "With this box, you can play an MP3 and I can make it sound as good as an SACD." And I just said, I don't think so. He said, and I'm going to do, you put your hand up, and then like that.
Oh
And
yeah, he did the deltoid.
yeah. And you know what? I mean, first we played the high resolution thing, and he made my hand go down. It's like I said, you're
Right,
pushing down on
exactly.
my arm. Now you can't do it. Now I can't begin to move your arm. Yeah, because you're barely touching my arm. The other time you were banging on it to the floor. What do you?
No, not necessarily. Dr. Diamond actually visited me for a day.
No, he made that may be right, but what Mark the Levinson was doing was like, Mark,
Was wrong.
try to
Okay.
20-year-old. Do that to a 20-year-old. Don't do that to me. I can feel your hand pushing.
Oh, I understand. Well, it's supposed to be a timing thing with that.
Yes, that's what I think.
We had things going on you wouldn't believe. We had
Mm.
Neil. Well, I used to have what was her name? Enid Lumley used to come visit.
I remember. Oh,
Set
I
up
remember.
my system. He used to,
He was
and
a
she would play with my turntable, and I had this rubber mat on it, platter matter or something. And she found that rotating the mat relative to the turntable would make the sound change.
Did it?
It did, and I could hear it. And Karen, my lady at the time, who was a great listener, she could hear it. And of course, Enid could. But then I brought him in. I brought Dr. Diamond in, and his son. He had it with his son, and he could hear it too. And he said, "Oh,
I don't
no."
doubt all those
He
things.
says, "Oh no, not another variable." Because all we were doing was moving this mat, rotating this rubberized mat, just 30, 30 or 40 degrees. And
Okay.
it was nuts. And my arm would go up or down. I mean, you could actually tell where the mat was.
Well, when Enid Lumley had a thing where she said, when I move the faucet in my sink and I move it, even though the stereo's in the other room, when I move the faucet in my sink from the right-hand sink to the left-hand sink, it makes a difference.
Oh, she was pretty crazy,
Yeah.
but she was brilliant. She actually had a virtual PhD, in psychology. She had a master's already, but she actually was going for a PhD at UCLA. And she had a girlfriend, I think, that she fell in love with at a bad situation. And she dropped out of school and left her master's thesis or her PhD thesis without going all the way through.
Oh.
And but Enid was brilliant. She really was, but a little bit scattered in that respect. She
Yes.
could do things or think things that
There are a lot of people in this business like that, like Judy Spotheim. You know Judy Spotheim? She made a turntable. She was in the Netherlands. She used to call me like at 3 a.m. Mr. Fremer, I'm calling you. I need to have I have a change to my turntable. I want to talk to you about it. I said, Judy, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Call me back at 6, okay? It's like
yeah.
this business is got characters, but that's the best part, one of the best parts about it. So anyway, I really have to go to sleep.
Oh, I don't blame you.
All right. Thank you again. This was phenomenal.
I hope everybody enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to John, and it was good.
Yeah, well, good for you, Leslie. Thank you, Leslie, for getting me out of the wherever I usually am
Forcing you to tell your story.
to do
Michael,
something
we should
like
do
this.
the same thing with you next time.
Where are you usually that you got out of? In a bar?
Me?
She just said she got you out of someplace.
Well, off my couch, really.
Off his couch, yes.
Yeah, I'm usually just sitting back listening. I'm listening on a Telefunken portable radio from 1966.
Oh,
And that's my reference standard.
The wooden case, and you.
Well, it has to have a wooden case.
Yeah.
It's a portable. It's a Biazzo. I found this radio back in 1965, actually, and I bought it in Munich, of all places, as being the finest portable radio system that I'd ever heard. And I tried England and I tried France, and then I went to Munich, and that's when I heard this, and I said, "This is it." And I bought about 5 of these things. These portable radios. They're about a foot wide, and they have a nice little speaker in there. It's mono.
So
But
you're a hoarder, man. You buy 5 of those, 5,000 FETs.
well, you know, people would steal them out of my cars. What would happen? I lost I lost 2 or 3 of them just through car theft. You know, through people breaking my in and stealing my radios.
Okay, I'm going to.
Okay, you go, buddy.
Okay.
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 Thank you
Bye,
very much,
everybody.
John.
It was
Bye.
really was fun. Okay.
Phenomenal.
How do I do
Thank
this?
you, guys.